Great. Thanks for everybody to join in either during the session or for, as I understand, we're recording this. So for folks that are watching this later on, appreciate your time and interest. We had the opportunity that we could kind of reach out to folks. And as you see on the slide, one of the key things that we want to talk about is artificial intelligence with regard to what we're trying to do to support the Army. But also recognize that we really are excited about the opportunity to partner with one of the most vibrant ecosystems in the world here in Pittsburgh. And so with that, I just want to give you a little bit of background before I turn it over to the experts who are doing all the great work. So if we could go to the next slide, please. And so what I'll talk about is in 2018, the Army made the decision to establish the first new 4-star command in the Army in essentially the last 40 years. And what drove us to that was the recognition that we could no longer take the approach of where we would simply outsource all of our development and research. And we really needed to try a different model where we not only partner, but actually embed with those communities that are leading and driving all of that change. And so the Army established Army Futures Command in Austin, Texas, which is, as you see in the media, has really been kind of a large growing community there in terms of its tech base and interest with corporate investment. And so when the Army asked, the question, where should we put the Artificial Intelligence Task Force to initiate a similar type of activity and partnership, the answer that was fed back to us from the experts was Pittsburgh overwhelmingly. It had not only the breadth and depth in terms of talent, but also it was on a trajectory of significant growth and advancement. And so with the establishment of the task force, back in 2018, we partnered up with Carnegie Mellon, who was gracious enough to essentially host us here and give us a base of operations, if you will, to allow us to engage with academia, research, and industry. And so from there, we've been successful with a number of efforts, and we want to highlight one for you today that kind of speaks to this partnership as we prepare to expand our scope and progress from just the task force, which is several people, to an actual the Artificial Intelligence Integration Center later this year. And so the key thing that I'd like to highlight there's really 5 things that we're focused on in terms of our lines of effort, and you see those reflected on the slide in terms of setting the conditions. As you know, there's a huge step going from kind of the industrial-based organization to one that is digitally based and leverages artificial intelligence for its operations. The second thing is, and this is another key point for the Army, the main priority the Army has and will be on its people. And so for us, a key line of effort is our workforce development programs that we have in place, both in terms of formal education as well as training and certifications for our soldiers, civilians, and the entire workforce. And what that allows us to do by having those conditions in the workforce is it really accelerates our efforts to modernize our platforms and to generate the capabilities that our soldiers need to accomplish their missions. And then, of course, as you would with any large organization such as the Army, we're looking to actually redefine those governance relationships and establish these partnerships to accelerate and build in agility. I know that may sound interesting for folks when they think about a DoD or service trying to be agile, but that is something that we're really trying to strive for and learn from our partners on. And then, of course, I can't overstate how important ethics are when it comes to AI. There's always a constant stream of articles and thought pieces about the implications of what AI can and should do and what it doesn't or shouldn't do. And so one of the main efforts that we are focusing on is consideration of ethics, legal, policy, as well as the technology. And ultimately, the goal that we want to have is we want to deliver AI solutions at speed to enable our missions, because it really is coming back to, can we have mission assurance to achieve the results that we're looking for? And so, as I said before, the first line of effort is really about setting the conditions. And so the Army not well known necessarily for having this high level of technical experts. We were fortunate enough that we were able to bring in Lieutenant Colonel Isaac Faber, PhD, who joined us from recently coming from Stanford University. And so when he got on board, I asked him the question. I said, "What is your top recommendation?" And so he said, "Look, if we're going to achieve the results that we're supposed to, the key thing we have to have is a platform by which folks can have the tools, the data, all the requisite things that you find in a development environment to speed those solutions development." And so, great work by Isaac and the team pulling that together so far. And what I'd like to do is ask him if he would to share not only the advancements they've made in terms of technical, but really highlight the uniqueness that we are now adopting as a model by bringing together both academic researchers with our industry partners to quickly and agilely develop these capabilities that we know we need to have. And so without further ado, Isaac, if you would, you want to share some more information. Thanks.
Sir, thank you for that great introduction and lead-in. So my name is Lieutenant Colonel Isaac Faber, and I'm the Chief Data Scientist at the Artificial Intelligence Task Force, working directly for Dr. Maddie. My primary responsibility, as Dr. Maddie mentioned, is the project manager on our project that we're calling COEUS. And COEUS is our AI and data science development platform, and it's one of many different things that are going on inside of the task force, but we chose to highlight it today for a number of reasons that I hope will be obvious over the next 10 to 15 minutes as we show you the community that we're able to build uniquely, honestly, here in the Pittsburgh area that's allowed us to accelerate the development of what is actually a fairly complicated piece of machinery in a very complicated organization like the Army. So everything starts in a good development platform with a user base. So a group or a workforce of people who have a diverse set of skills whose responsibility it is to do data work. The Army has a lot of talented people. So you just heard from our director, Dr. Maddie. I'm going to brag on him a little bit. Like, this is the type of person that we have in the Army, right? So Dr. Maddie has a PhD from MIT. He was a professor of math at West Point. He's got a huge amount of quantitative experience in the Army. And we can find a person like that to run an organization like the AI Task Force. What we want to make sure is that, if we have a representative population of people like that, and a population that's growing as we get more people through school, like with our AI Scholars Program that we're running at Carnegie Mellon through the Computer Science Department and the Heinz College, as that population grows, we want a robust and exciting environment for them to be able to interface with and log into so that they can actually get their work done at scale. The problem is that our IT system within the federal government is a nightmare. And it's a nightmare for a lot of different reasons, but probably the most important is that we are extremely security conscious, which makes it very difficult to get new pieces of software or new workflows. So a lot of the things that we have are a number of years old because all of the onerous issues that we have with security compliance, it makes it difficult to get things up and running quickly. When we started designing COEUS, one of the things that Dr. Maddie directed me early on was like, hey, this thing needs to be available for everybody across the classifications, across all of the mission areas. And what that means is that we have a bunch of networks, right? So instead of just one piece of software that I can install on one network, we had to design something that was designed to work across many networks here. And if you're not familiar with these terms, R&D, NIPR, SIPR, JWICs, and out at the edge, these are different networks that have different classifications and impressions. And so this piece of software, this platform, needs to be able to stretch across them, reach across and share artifacts across each of them. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that that workforce is abstracted from that problem. So how do we create systems that communicate in a federated way, which is, of course, layers on its own level of complexity that most development environments don't have to worry about. And what we did is we designed this user interface. It feels a lot like a Netflixy type experience. And when the workforce logs in, we make sure that they're on the appropriate network, and we give them access to a bunch of resources that any data scientist, data engineer, or data analyst would need. And some things we build ourselves, right? So things like data set catalogs or model monitoring or project management tools. Other things we purchase from vendors, right? So tools where you're going to write code, or you're building dashboard, or maybe you're doing data labeling. So the platform makes it very, very easy to get access to the right tool, and then to be able to spin up the right amount of infrastructure, whether you need a GPU if you're doing deep learning, or you just need some memory and some processing if you're doing some simple visualization. The platform itself does all of the orchestration, so it manages all of the underlying compute and containerization of all the products and tooling that the workforce uses. So they don't, workforce user now does not have to be an expert in cloud native development. They just have to know how to use the tool of interest, and the platform itself takes care of all of those components. It's also important to note that we have authoritative data sources for the same reason of secure access. These things are tied directly into APIs that are connected through the user interface layer, which allows us to connect and get through a lot of those policy issues that I mentioned earlier on. So a product like COEUS would not have been possible to be built in a typical Army organization, if not for the organization structure like we have in the AI task force, the ability to reach into the community of Pittsburgh to be able to pull out, hey, which of these components are basic research that we can have professors look at? Which of these components can be implemented right now because they're best practices in industry, and we can work with an industry partner? And those people are all literally within a 5-minute drive from our office. Is pretty amazing. That doesn't exist in many other places around the world. So from your mind's eye, we are able to deliver at speed. Literally started developing blank notepads, no code in August. And now we're at a full MVP, and we have a select group of data science folks in the Army that are currently evaluating the existing product. That's from nothing to an MVP in 5 months. That's startup Silicon Valley fast speed, and it could only happen if we have a village. So the way this process works is actually not intended to be like a single development cycle. It's intended to be continuous. And in order for this continuous development to happen, we have 3 major partners, and we'll hear from a couple of them today. The first at the top, we have CMU, specifically at the Parallel Data Lab with Dr. Greg Ganger, who I'll hand the mic over to here in a moment. He is working on Project Phoebe. If you don't know your Greek mythology, COEUS and Phoebe were married at one point, COEUS being the titan of intelligence, and then Phoebe, I'm not sure what was the titan of, but they had a relationship. Anyway, so Phoebe is our basic research project. So Greg works on literally cutting edge machine learning ops, basic research ideas. And what happens is that as they come up with new things inside of the university, we have our FFRDC partner in SEI take those things, the research papers, the rough around the edge grad student type products, and they go through proof of concepts and hardening. And then that proof of concept gets documented and then handed over to our development partner, which is VISIMO, which is a small business here in the Pittsburgh area that does the actual product development. And this is a virtuous cycle that we hope to continue for many years to come, as we have new things come out of basic research, they get validated and vetted, and they get integrated into a product. This allows us to make the statement that our AI and data science development platform will be one of the most advanced platforms in the world, always, because we will always be pulling the best research from the best AI research institute in the world and integrating it through a professional and very competent vendor that makes sure that that code base is stable, accessible, and reliable, and that the product is widely available across the enterprise. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Greg, who's going to talk a little bit about the work at the Parallel Data Lab and what they've done so far with Project COEUS.
All right, hello. My name is Greg Ganger. I'm a faculty member at Carnegie Mellon, and I lead a research center, as Isaac mentioned, called the Parallel Data Lab, which has been one of the top, I think the top research center in the world focused on large-scale data storage, organization, and processing for almost 3 decades now. It started even before I got here, given my gray hair. Part of where its success comes from is it has tight connections to the biggest organizations in industry, including sponsorship from sort of all of the main companies you would think of in these areas. The picture in the bottom middle is from our 2019 3-day retreat that we did with visitors from these companies where we describe to them all the research we're doing and get a bunch of feedback from them as a way both of technology transfer into industry, but also identification of what are the most important problems facing forward progress in these spaces. We were thrilled to get involved with the Army AI Task Force when they dove into this space of trying to figure out if they were going to really use AI in AI operation, in Army operations, how they were going to do AI in order to make that usage really work, right? So how they were going to develop AI applications and how they were going to maintain them over time and operate them in the field. And apply automation approaches and better tools to making that be effective and efficient and streamlined. We've also, our faculty that are part of PDL are also heavily involved in some of the capability or capacity building programs that Dr. Maddie and Dr. Faber mentioned regarding the education side of building up the number of folks that can really do this stuff thoroughly within the Army. We have a number of activities within the Phoebe project. Phoebe was the Titan of oracular wisdom. Isaac, just to remind you of that. So you can think of that as some of the long-range thinking about what has to happen to complement the COEUS activities of what's the platform for actually doing this stuff in the moment. Right. So we're exploring some of the directions that will be really important for COEUS to adopt the effective solutions to, if it's going to continue to be a platform that allows for effective development and maintenance of these applications over time. You can think of what we're doing as blazing various trails to figure out which ones actually lead somewhere versus not leading somewhere, so that COEUS can adopt and follow the paths that are really going to get them to where they want to be, as opposed to taking a lot of false steps, which any aggressive development activity could end up doing if it's not paying attention to what comes the step after the next step, right? We're thrilled to be involved. The other pictures on here, by the way, are the picture to the left and the right at the bottom are of an experimental data center space that we maintain so that we can prototype some of these things on real hardware all the way up to the upper levels of the software stack and really see where it's going to fall over, if it's going to fall over, or measure how well it works when it works. And that's an important part of doing this kind of research, really prototyping things out to make sure that they're going to work effectively when you try to do them at larger scales. I don't want to get into specific projects because we have limited time. So I think, Dr. Faber, I think what I'm supposed to do here is hand it over to Alex, or maybe hand it over to you to introduce him.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks so much, Greg. That was awesome. And following up from basic research, we're going to talk about more near-term development with our industry partner. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Alex. And he'll talk to you a little bit about how VISIMO is working with COEUS.
Great. Thanks, Dr. Faber. So I did see a question come through on how startups and small businesses can work with AITF. So I'm happy to answer any of those questions if you just want to shoot me an email at some point, and I can put that up in the chat at the end of this. But that's one of the things that I do want to talk more about, how easy it is and how many opportunities there are for small businesses in Pittsburgh to be able to interface with the DoD and the federal government, especially the AI task force, and how great of an experience supporting their work and working with them has been for us. So we're a small team, and having this opportunity has been a really great experience all around. I know, Phoebe and COEUS are the titans of wisdom and intellect, but we like to think of this as more of a Pittsburgh centric story, one where we're really working to build this bridge together, where these three organizations, VISIMO and AITF and SEI, we're all taking a chance to try something new. AITF took a chance to work with us as a small business that didn't have any prior defense or federal contracting experience. And we as a small business took a chance on this new really embedded interactive technology building project. And SEI as a really well-known research institution took a chance working with the two of us, and something really game-changing is coming out of it. And it's something that we are really proud to support, and something that I think is going to be used in the future as a new model for defense contracting. So I think there's a few key takeaways that we want to be able to drive home here. One, that there's a ton of experience and an opportunity to be gained from working with the DoD and working with AITF specifically. They're growing, and there's a lot of opportunity for other small businesses to get involved. And two, the opportunities here are good for everyone in Pittsburgh. There's going to be more jobs for students coming out of Pitt and CMU and the other universities. There's going to be more opportunities for businesses to get contracts, and more exposure for any of the companies in Pittsburgh on the national stage are going to lead to more investment here in the region. So happy to be able to take part in this, and thanks again to Dr. Maddie and Dr. Faber for trusting in us to support this work.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alex. And with that, we are open, I think exactly on time at 25 after for 5 minutes of questions and answers. So I believe Lindsay was going to moderate the Q&A.
I'll just jump in. So I'm looking through the chat and I see there's one question about how can small businesses or startups interact with AITC? And so the short answer to that is we have a directorate that focuses on finance and business operations, and we actually have committed folks that work with outreach into the ecosystem. The best way I could say is if you have interest, you can always look at our website. That's easily searchable to find us on the web, but then also you can drop a note directly to us at engage@US Army, that's all concatenated, USARMY.ai. So again, engage@usarmy.ai. And I think I'll highlight what Alex said. The key thing there is that we are very focused on outcomes and results, and not necessarily on the process by which we can actually get together. What I tell folks, the guidance I give folks is, you're on the team until you tell us you can't be on the team. And so trust me, there are more than enough opportunities, challenges, project work, etc., that we know we need to have everybody on the bench working together. So with that, I'll kind of look through and see if there's any other questions. Yeah. So I don't know, I'll pause there to see if there's any other questions. Either folks want to voice it online or if they want to add to the chat.
Yeah, the only question I'd asked the question about how startups can essentially engage. We're with a company that focuses on predictive maintenance, and I saw that as a focus area. So I'll follow up through engage@usarmy.ai and share what we're doing and see how we could participate.
Great. Yeah, and I will tell you, back to along those same lines. I mean, part of what was helpful in doing this was participating in these kinds of forums with the Pitt Tech Council, for example. Isaac, I think it's been a little bit more than a year ago. I'd asked you to go over and talk with folks there at the Tech Council. And I think that opened up the eyes, kind of like these types of opportunities to really pull folks together. And so I think that's where we first heard of VISIMO, and we started to look at some other things. And so, that's what's so exciting. I mean, typically you find most Army organizations on an installation or a base, I say inside the wire. And, again, this whole approach that we're taking with Army Futures Command is we are out in the community. We're out in, the workspaces, if you will. And granted, even with the current restrictions that we all face with COVID, opportunities like this to engage virtually, I think, are still allowing us to do that. And so we look forward to continuing to have these initial discussions, to meet with folks. And as we get ready for now with immunizations and restrictions, hopefully being able to remain relaxed, et cetera, we'll have a number of more activities, and appreciate the support from organizations like the Pitt Tech Council to facilitate these types of engagements.
Okay, thank you so much for that presentation. If we have any more questions come in, we'll be sure to forward those on over to you guys.